Reactive training systems.
So I used to get asked a lot whenever I would post videos of a training session, what's the string attached to the bar? Now I've been gradually getting this question less and less, which is good, I think, because it means that people in general are becoming more familiar with velocity and velocity-based training. So there's your answer if you were wondering. It's a device that measures the speed of the bar. Currently I'm using the Open Barbell version 3, and I really like it. It's really enjoyable, very easy to use. The battery life is excellent. It's lightweight. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about it. I know that they can be a bit hard to get sometimes, but if you can get a hold of one, it's well worth adding that to your training kit. Now, I just want to share real quick about how I use velocity in my training. So obviously, I'm a big proponent of RPE and RPE style training. I base my training loads off of my RPE. I update my target weights based on RPE. I use it, in my mind, to the full extent possible. So to me, the role for velocity or video review or anything like that always comes back to enriching that RPE assessment. So if I call something an 8 RPE, I'm probably not going to completely override that based on velocity. I may adjust it a little bit, a half a point even, if the velocity disagrees with my internal perception. And I use video in the same way. In fact, just this morning, I did a training session. I completed the set, and in my mind, it was a 9 RPE. Then when I looked at the video and looked at the velocity, it suggested that the RPE was actually a bit less than that. So in my training log, I recorded it as 8.5. My internal perception was 9. The external perception was less than that. So I adjusted by half a point and called it 8.5. So that's a way for me to add a bit of objectivity to the subjectivity of RPE. Now, I think that that's the right way to do it. Okay. I started recording velocity in my training in 2009. I have one of the original Tendo units. I've used several different types of velocity measurement over the years. And for a while, I got away from recording my subjective RPE entirely. And I think that was a mistake. As I've gone deeper into this training rabbit hole, I've come to the conclusion that velocity covers, especially for the power lifts and for the style of training that most powerlifters do, velocity covers most of what RPE encompasses. Now, I'm speaking specifically about RPE, the way that we use it, the way that we teach it, and so on. But I think velocity covers about 80% of it. You know, so if you know a lifter's velocity and you know the other relevant details like the velocity of their 1 rep max and kind of how that velocity drop off happens as they go through their repetitions, then you get a good idea of you can get a good idea of what their RPE is just by looking at that velocity number. But it's not perfect. It's not entirely encompassing of the level of difficulty, the level of effort. I think that having that subjective RPE is useful and important. I think it allows you to never run out of batteries in a way. Devices work, sometimes they don't work. They misread reps sometimes, and sometimes they're just plain not as accurate as we would like. Now, the better the device that you get, the less that's a problem, but it's always there. And I find that velocity can sometimes give you this false sense of certainty, this false sense of security. And having your subjective RPE to rely on is important. And for a competitive lifter, it's a very useful skill to develop for the platform. So the way I've used it is I will do my set and I'll rate the subjective RPE. Then I'll look at the velocity, I'll look at whatever other external feedback that I've got, training partner, video, velocity, anything like that. In the case of velocity specifically, I have charts that I've built that are not really rocket science to create. It's just observation of RPEs and velocities and, drawing the correlations there. But I've got charts that will relate a velocity measurement to an RPE. So it's different for each lift. So I know in the bench press, for example, if it's 0.19 meters per second to 0.22 or 0.23, that's an 8 RPE. So if I'm in that range, then velocity says that it's an 8 RPE, based on my historical training data, based on my own subjective ratings in the past. So it's a good way to keep my RPE ratings somewhat consistent without venturing into the realm of inflexibility. So that's kind of how I've used velocity, and definitely how I would recommend velocity be used for any of our athletes or anybody who's seeking to train in a style that's similar to what we teach.
Reactive Training Systems.